Hello, folks. Just a quick one on the Western concepts of God. Pretty interesting stuff. So, this is on the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy, and it was the first thing that came up. So, I had a little read through. And originally, I was looking at the debate between Aristotle and Plato when they proved God, but that didn't come up. So, this came up. And then when I was reading through the Platonic version of God and the Aristotelian version of God, there were some differences, but both held there is a God. Plato was leaning more towards gods. Anyway, kind of get a grasp here in the introduction of the clear, like the defined boundary of the Western concepts of God. So it says, Western concepts of God have ranged from the detached, transcendent demiurge of Aristotle to the pantheism of Spinoza. Nevertheless, much of Western thought about God has fallen within some broad form of theism. Theism is a view that there is a God, which is the creator and sustainer of the universe, and is unlimited with regard to knowledge, omniscience, power, omnipotence, extension, omnipresence, and moral perfection. Though regarded as sexless, God has traditionally been referred to by the masculine pronoun. Concepts of God in philosophy are entwined with concepts of God in religion. This is most obvious in figures like Augustine and Aquinas, who sought to bring more rigor and consistency to concepts found in religion. Others like Leibniz and Hegel interacted constructively and deeply with religious concepts. Even those like Hume and Nietzsche, who criticized the concept of God, dealt with religious concepts, while Western philosophy has interfaced most obviously with Christianity. Judaism and Islam have had some influence. The orthodox forms of all three religions have embraced theism, though each religion also yielded a wide array of other views. Philosophy has shown a similar variety, for example, with regard to the initiating cause of the world. Plato and Aristotle, that must be reference to the debate. Plato and Aristotle held God to be the crafter of the uncreated matter. Plotinus regarded matter as emanating from God. Spinoza, departing from his Judaistic roots, held God to be identical with the universe, while Hegel came to a similar view by reinterpreting Christianity. Issues related to Western concepts of God include the nature of divine attributes and how they can be known, or if or how that knowledge can be communicated, the relation between such knowledge and logic, the nature of divine causality, and the relation between the divine and the human will. And then it gives a list of contents. So we've got the sources of Western concepts of God, and then 2, the historical overview, the Greeks, early Christian thought, medieval thought, Renaissance thought, Enlightenment, and then the modern period. Then we've got 3, the divine attributes, A, incorporeality, B, simplicity, C, unity, D, eternity, E, immutability, F, omnipotence, G, omniscience, H, impassibility, I, goodness, and for references and further reading. So, 1. The sources of Western concepts of God. Sources of Western concepts of the divine have been threefold: experience, revelation, and reason. Reported experiences of God are remarkably varied and have produced equally varied concepts of the divine being. Experiences can be occasioned by something external and universally available, such as a starry sky, or by something external and private, such as a burning bush. Experiences can be internal and effable, such as a vision, or internal and ineffable, as is claimed by some mystics. Revelation can be linked to religious experience or a type of it, both for the person originally receiving it and the one merely accepting it as authoritative. Those who accept its authority typically regard it as a source of concepts of the divine that are more detailed and more accurate than could be obtained by other means. Increasingly, the modern focus has been on the complexities of the process of interpretation, the philosophical hermeneutics, and the extent to which it is necessarily subjective. Revelation can be intentionally unconnected to reason such that it is accepted on bare faith, fideism, compare Kierkegaard, or at the other extreme, can be grounded in reason, in that it is accepted because and only insofar as it's reasonable, compare Locke. So Kierkegaard, in the faith, the fideism, said compare Kierkegaard, he's a philosopher, and then compare Locke as John Locke, he's a philosopher. So reason has been taken as ancillary to religious experience and revelation, or on other accounts as independent and the sole reliable source of concepts of God. So each of the three sources of concepts of God has had those who regard it as the sole reliable basis of our idea of the divine. By contrast, others have regarded two or three of the sources as interdependent and mutually reinforcing. Regardless of these differing approaches, theism, broadly construed, has been a dominant theme for much of the history of Western thought. So 2 is the historical view, and I'll sort of leave it there, but you can go on this page, as I say, the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy. I searched Aristotle and Plato debate of God. I think that was my search, and that was when this page came up. But I guess you could just put Western concepts of God and the page will come up. And I think it's really interesting to sort of give you a good foundation of the different ways that great thinkers have come to the conclusions about concepts of God. Obviously, God, is huge beyond anyone's. We're just like little nuggets, aren't we? And God is just like this immense, all-pervading, in our general concept where we are today, which, built on 3,000 years of Greek thought, and then all of the great philosophy that has come afterwards, we're on pretty good footing to understand, a lot of things, especially that we've got the internet and people are studious in the pursuit of knowledge. So, we could be easily say that we're as elevated as many of the great thinkers, or at least we're certainly heading in that direction um, as we filter through, all of the information. And ultimately, God is what makes sense, isn't it? That is what makes sense, because, you plant a tree and innately the tree will grow as the tree has grown generations before. That's not subject to change in so much as its nature. It may change in character in a physical material sense. Each leaf may not directly represent the leaf before, because obviously germination between the male tree and the female tree has to take place. So the nature remains the same, but the change in the material form, especially, that's only almost like geographically. But when we speak in terms of time, it certainly does exist as its own unique creation. And I think that's the important thing, is that there is common sense within, and that is what we can hold on to as what God is, if we're going to define an is of what God is. At least, that's where my head's at the moment. You may draw better conclusions, or my conclusion may aid you to consider and ponder further. But that's always sort of been my stance, is that, and now I can articulate it well, is that, the perfection of man, the perfection of nature, has imperfections, but not through the imperfections of the nature, but the imperfections of the physical material. And that's where, man has sort of, well, existed to aid the existence of God in nature, to hone, to nurture, to nourish, to allow to flourish and succeed in this, I wouldn't say cross pollination, but this bridge between the ethereal and the natural. If we want to live in a beautiful natural world, then we have to take responsibility in the common sense. God is common sense, and common sense is God, as it were. It seems to about corner the argument. Can't see how it needs to be defined much further than that, if we're going to take it to the lowest common denominator. Anyway, that's it now. So, happy ponderings, and thanks for listening.